Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mid.Life.Artist podcast. If you're in the US, I'm hoping you're getting to enjoy a long weekend for this Labor Day. This week on the podcast, we have Jenna Swartz, who is a published author and poet, a mentor, a creative writing coach. She has created writing retreats, creative circles. Like, just when it comes to writing and expression in words, Jenna is your girl for sure. And so we talked to her this week, and I think when you listen to the podcast, what you're going to come away with more than anything is to feel so supported in pursuing your own creativity, whatever that looks like to you. So I can't wait to share her with you. Everyone, please help me welcome Jenna Swartz. Hello and welcome back to the Mid.Life.Artist podcast. I am your host, as always, Brandy Reynolds. With me today, I have Jenna Swartz, who is a writer, poet, and teacher, who I actually met through friend of the pod, Allison Tyler, years ago. Jenna, say hello and tell people where they can find you.
Hello, Brandy. I'm so happy to be here. This is exciting. People can find me in a multitude of places online. My website, first and foremost, is jennaschwartz.com, and it's Jenna with one N. I always point that out because it gets misspelled pretty often. And I also write on Substack. My newsletter is called Dispatches from Daily Life.
It's lovely.
So that's a place people can find me, and people are welcome to find me on Facebook too. I'm very findable and happy to be found for the most part. Yep. So yeah.
And so, like I said, I got introduced to you through Allison. I was looking for just sort of like a creative outlet. I just needed to kind of express my creativity in a way, and needing kind of like a community and support. And she mentioned you. She had taken some of your online offerings, and I found this really lovely community. And what's really funny is it is writing based. I used the writing to kind of help with my visual mediums. Because I think sort of like all creativity has a root in the same place. And I was just before we kind of get into like your history and stuff, I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on like creativity and its base and how it can affect other forms of creativity. Does that ring true to you? Do you not find that to be the case?
Definitely rings true to me. I mean, I think there can be so much resonance and synergy and kind of cross-pollination between different expression, like different forms. Like I think creativity is creativity. And so, wherever, and sometimes it's helpful to tap into one medium, to kind of energize a different medium. So I love that you used writing as a way of like then nourishing your visual art, deepening it.
Art.
Exactly. So that's awesome. I've also we can talk more about this later maybe, but I've also kind of delved into more visual art over the last several years, and that's been an interesting experience for me.
Does it inform your writing? Does it go back the other way? Does your writing inform or cross-pollinate the visual mediums?
Really good question. I think so. And I'm trying to think how I would even articulate like how it works. Like I think sometimes for me writing is like actually can give me almost like some respite from writing, because it's not cognitive in the same way. It's just so different to not be working with language, which is my main medium. So in some ways I feel like working visually is sort of can relax me in a different way.
No, that makes sense.
And I think that probably does feedback. But I also think about like not always probably, but I've for many years now kind of paired often my writing with either a visual or my own photography. So I think there's definitely a really strong link there for me. And music too is another medium that is like a really big part of my creative life.
You touch on something, because if you're writing, you're working with language, a
Mhm.
language that you did not come up with, a codified language, and it has it is finite in some sense. Um, and so it can be really taxing if you're really trying to articulate something that is not a feeling or an experience that has a component that's more ethereal. So it makes sense that your visuals can help in that process because it can help communicate the stuff that's not um
Mhm.
as easily put into language.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yes, that's
sometimes
really
think
well
that
put.
writing is the hardest medium because of that, because you're working with like a word that some dude 1,000 years ago came.
Which is probably, one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by etymology too, is like to
That
kind
makes
of take
sense.
a word and really like dig into its,
That makes sense.
maybe its roots or its original meaning or, and then to be able to play with language too.
Yeah,
And see like how can we stretch it and kind of reinvent it. But you're right, there are certain structures around language that are I guess this could be its a whole own conversation, like how fixed are they?
right.
But
Yes. Yes.
yeah, very different to be working visually. Yeah, I have a little postcard on my wall right in front of my desk. I've got like a little bit of a collage on my wall in front of me here with lots of images and words. And I have this postcard. It's a blessing for creativity. Um, by a rabbi named Adina Allen. Can I read it to you?
Absolutely, please.
So I'll read it in English. It's in Hebrew too, but in English it says, "Blessed are you, God, source of life, who creates us in your image and invites us to renew daily the work of creation. Blessed are you who created us creative." And I feel like that kind of speaks to that. Like we're all created creative. Like we are actually
Yes.
works of creation ourselves. So I think the idea that like I've had many clients over the years who will kind of start working with me saying, well, I'm not actually that creative, or I'm not like a naturally creative person, or I'm not that talented creatively. And it's always interesting to hear that and to hear how we sort of, but if you spend any time with kids, I mean, you experience, that inherent creativity and curiosity. I think that we really are, that
I
we come in with.
100% agree. Yes. I mean, I think so many of us, one of the reasons I'm so interested specifically in midlife artists is a lot of us, it took getting to later in life to rediscover, and it was a rediscovering because
Hmm.
being told the idea that you're not creative is because, in my opinion, you've been fed this idea that creative looks this way. You go to an art school and you get like a painting admitted to the Louvre or whatever, and that's like literally it. That's the only way you're a creative person, and I find that just not to be the case. And I thank you for really bringing that up. Um, uh, so getting back to, we're gonna like really roll it back. How
Okay.
did you get started writing? Did you all like? I take it as far back as like.
Pretty much. I know. I'm like, how did I start breathing? Like, I don't know how or when or why. I've tried to remember this. Like, if I have like a first writing memory, um, I'm the youngest of three sisters. I remember desperately wanting homework, when my 2 older sisters
Mhm.
were, already of school age and I wasn't in school yet. I always loved learning. I think that I know, like, from a very young age, and I remember having a subscription to a magazine called Stone Soup, which I think is still going, and it's a literary magazine for children. I don't know how old I was when I got it, and it's a little chicken and egg. It's like, did my parents get that for me because they saw a kind of
Right.
inclination towards writing, poetry, storytelling, art, um, or did who knows, but yeah, it's the first and youngest memory I have of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a poet.
Okay.
Um, like that was my answer. The other thing I remember wanting was to speak all the languages. Like those were the two things that I just thought would be so cool. Like I want
Just
to be a
all of
poet, all of them. Right?
them. Yes.
Like that was like one of my hobbies, was to kind of think about like what language would I study next, So I think, and I started taking piano lessons when I was probably 5ish. and my mom is a dancer, so I think there was, like, a lot of just yeah, writing, but I mean, I remember writing, I famously to me, I don't know,
Mm.
not to anyone else, but, the first book I started writing was in kindergarten, um, and I don't think I got past the title, but the title was Bad Days for Jennifer, and Jennifer was my birth name. It's legally Jenna now, but, yeah, Bad Days for Jennifer was my first book. So,
You
I
know,
think I've just always been writing.
absolutely love that. Did you ever have a dip where you kinda lost it, or were you able to kinda hold on to that
Oh, I definitely
throughout?
had a dip. No, I definitely had a dip. I would say I think I wrote a lot, like, through, um, book journaling, poetry, like, also, like, I loved writing for school, history papers, like, through high school, I won awards, like, writing was, like I was always writing. Um, and then in college, I wrote a ton, but not creatively, quote, unquote.
Okay.
I wanna put that in quotes 'cause
Right.
I as I say it out loud, I'm hesitant to kind of have this big divider between creative and non-creative writing. So that's another
Okay.
topic probably, but it was academic. I mean, it was
Yes.
scholarly, it was, like, research-based.
Yes, yes.
I didn't take a single English class in college, which often
Wow.
surprises people.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I wasn't that wasn't my, my area of study. And I did write some poems, but, like, in high school, young, I say self-published, which was very different. This is, like, in the '80s.
Mm,
Like, 3 maybe chapbooks of poetry, and I would, like, I printed everything out, literally cut and paste, and, like, had to figure out the
yeah.
page how the pages turn into staples, and I would go to the copy store, and, it was, like, really, like, manual creative
Mhm.
process that I loved, and then I would make copies and give them to, like, my family. Like, that was something I was doing as a teenager. Um, and it's funny how, like, when you said, "Was there a dip?" And I was like, "Oh, definitely." And then as I'm talking, I'm like, "Okay, we're still waiting for the dip." Like, I went to college, a lot of scholarly writing, very
But it didn't
serious.
feel
Like,
I mean, I think it's valid to
I
be
didn't
like,
feel
that
y
was because you needed to get a grade and it was somebody was determining the
totally.
topic,
Yeah.
and so I think it does feel there is a listen, there is a difference, and
Mhm.
it's not that it's any less creative, but there is a difference in me doing a commission than doing
Mhm.
the idea that
Your
floated
own
in.
thing. Yeah, totally. I mean, I was writing papers about, like, Dostoevsky novels, like,
Right.
or periods of history, or um and then I got an MFA in my early mid-20s, in creative writing. But it's funny because looking back on that period, even though I was in a graduate writing program and writing a lot, and poetry was very, central to my life, I also feel like I was kind of plagued by this question of, like, what to do. Like, I felt like I had a very deep, I knew I was a writer, but I really had no sense of, like, what do I actually do? Like, what do I do for work? What do I do
Right.
for my life? And
Yeah.
that was not clear at all to me. So after I finished grad school, I was 26 when I finished, 25, 26, somewhere in there, when I got my MFA, and I was newly married to my ex-husband. And we bought a house, and I started a full-time job that had nothing to do with creative writing. I was the director of Hillel, Jewish student group at University of Vermont. And I think in that period is when I probably I journaled.
Yeah.
um, I think journaling was the writing I was doing at that time, but I didn't, and I wrote, I created a newsletter for Hillel, and, I was
Mhm.
probably always writing, but I think that I didn't have a sense of, like, where does this fit in my life? And there was no public facing piece of it at all, I
Right.
would say, for a good, well, probably at all until 2007, which is when I started a blog. And
Okay.
that was kind of I think that moment in time was like a marker of, like, a shift. Because suddenly there was a container for it.
And so when what was the topic of the blog at the time? Were you publishing your poetry, just kinda writing day in the life?
It was the name of the blog was Bullseye Baby,
Mhm.
and the little subtitle was A Place to Practice. And the sort of the impetus for it was literally giving myself, like, a place to practice writing. And the bullseye piece, the reference was about practice. Like, it was really, really it
Yeah.
was about, like, giving myself this structure where I would practice writing without getting kind of, locked into perfectionism.
Yeah.
So it was about, like, throwing the dart, like, missing the mark, and then there was this other layer of meaning to that image rooted in Jewish teachings about, forgiveness, self-compassion, because every year during, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Jewish high holidays of the New Year and the Day of Atonement, there's this individual and communal process of self-reflection and atonement and starting again, and
Mhm.
that resonated really deeply to me, and the word in Hebrew, chet, that's usually translated as sin, is more, like, precisely, uh, like, more accurately, it means missing the mark. So
Mhm.
there was this sort of feeling of, like, yeah, of recognizing the places where I held myself to very, like, stringent standards, I think, not just in writing, but kind of in general, and wanting
Yeah.
to keep
Yeah.
working against that. And so my blog in the original form was really about just, like, what evolved later into my work,
Okay.
but at the time was really just a place to, like, show up and write when my kids were napping. I mean, they were my kids at the time were both under 5.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so it well, I was gonna ask, so this the blog is what started what morphed into the work you do now?
Yeah, eventually,
Okay.
which I never, would have
So
foreseen
that
at that
wasn't
time.
the goal, it doesn't sound like it was the goal at the time at all.
No, it really wasn't at all. I mean, it was tied to work in that I had my first coaching business at that time already.
Okay.
Um, so the writing, my first, probably, I don't know how many, handful of blog posts ended with, like, this kind of coachy thing, like, I invite you to blah blah blah. And I think I dropped that at some point. But there was kind of a tie-in to, like, here's
Mhm.
stuff that I'm practicing, and here's an invitation to you, reader. So there was sort of the seed of that, but it wasn't explicitly about writing per se. Writing was more the medium for the practice, if that
And
makes
then
sense.
how did when did it become a little bit more solidified and maybe closer to what we see now where you do online offerings, coaching, one-on-ones,
Mhm.
you have a lot of really creative, classes people can take individually or sort of as a larger group?
That started, the first group I led was in December of 2014.
Okay.
So it was,
It
and
was
the
a good
blog
7 years
started
after
8
the
years,
blog.
really, because the blog started in January of 2007, and it was really the winter of 2015 that I kind of, like, started to I had a full-time job at the time. I was a career counselor,
Okay.
at Hampshire College in Massachusetts. I had moved from Vermont down to Massachusetts at that point, and, I started and I'd been writing all throughout. So, like, the blogging was continuous, and the writing and connecting with people through that
Mhm.
had sort of definitely gained just kind of a life of its own and a rhythm, and a lot of connections had
Uh-huh.
grown up out of that, um, including my now spouse, which is a whole other story, but that we actually met through a blog post of mine originally.
Oh,
Um,
I do I
yeah, so
love
that's a
that.
whole other thread. So a lot of life changes happened in that period of time. Um, but when I started my first writing group, and it was so magical and new, and I wrote my first 10 writing prompts. I'd never written a writing prompt before, and I was at a kind of low, like, a little bit of a precarious, like, a hard moment in my life where my I was newly remarried. My spouse, was suffering from some scary health stuff.
But you're sick.
You may
Yeah,
remember
yep,
some of this.
yep.
And I was working full time. I had 2 kids. I was co-parenting with my ex-husband. Like, there was a lot going on in my life that felt hard. And Sean Fink, who I always give a shout out to, who is also a writer, and she's a fellow coach. And I knew her through the blogging world. She also had kids around the same ages. And so we were these, I never really thought of myself as a mommy blogger, but I was a mom and a blogger. Um, anyway, Sean said, "Why don't you lead a writing group?" And she sort of offered me this. this very simple idea, this structure, and I was like, I don't know how to write writing prompts. It was this sort of like, I don't know how to do that. Um, but I did. I led that first group, and then every month after that, I led another one, and then people started to reach out to me to say like, you know, "Can I work with you one on one?" And this I led my first retreat, and all of this I was still working full time. I had the day job, and after about 6 months, I quit my day job and like just left, and I sort of combined the threads of coaching, which I've been doing since 2002 or three 2003, I think I started my first coaching business. So I sort of took the writing piece and the coaching piece and just braided them together.
I love how organically it came about for you, and I love that, it was kinda like people approaching you, and it just kind of that's really beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that. You had mentioned your faith several times during the course of this conversation, and I would love to talk because it is really relevant in part of your writing. If you read anything from Jenna for too long, she will bring up just the really beautiful aspects of her faith. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how writing
Mhm.
informs your faith, your faith informs your writing, as much as you feel comfortable sharing.
Sure. Yeah, I'm very comfortable talking about it. It's more a matter of like, how do I like describe that? It's such an interesting question because I think in some ways they are so linked. Um,
Well, here's maybe another way to put it. I
sure.
think
Hmm.
spirituality and creativity come from the same place. I think they're the same
Hmm.
thing. Like
Hmm.
whatever synapse in your head or whatever feels fulfilled by spirituality is the same one that feels fulfilled by creativity.
That's interesting. And the question of faith, like the word itself, like faith, it could refer to like your faith, like my Jewish faith, my faith as a Jew or Judaism, right? And then there's faith as a concept, like having faith,
It's
right?
true.
Like
It's true.
and I think writing in some ways is an act of faith in and of itself.
Wow.
I mean, almost like kind of not necessarily a particular faith, but for me certainly, like I think writing is one of the ways that I um, explore and learn about and sort of feel connected. And it's interesting. It's one of those questions that's like I it I appreciate you kind of bringing in this other way of thinking about it, like spirituality and creativity. I think you're right. Like are very um, in some ways maybe they're synonymous. I think we create a lot of categories. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's useful. Like I think humans need categories, but then sometimes it's like we can box ourselves in.
Yes. It's a
And
fine line.
yeah, yeah,
You
exactly,
need
but I think
containers, but you need a way to
yes,
like lock the containers.
both, exactly, it's kind of a paradox, in
Yeah.
some ways, but I think so much of who I am is rooted in my Jewish identity,
Yeah.
and um, that is so multifaceted that it does come through a lot in my writing, and I think writing is also sort of where I find form for things that don't like we were talking about earlier that
Yeah.
might it's a way of rooting in. Also, Judaism itself is it's so rooted in text
Mhm.
as a religion
Yeah.
and storytelling, as are many, as are other faiths, but for sure Judaism is very text based and it's very story oriented. And prayer and poetry to me are so closely related that I think one of the things I've discovered over many years is that um, for me, writing really is a form of prayer. Um,
Yes. Oh my gosh, you
and
just hit something like in my heart by saying that.
uh,
Yes. Yeah.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
This might be kind of random, but I also
Mhm,
know that um you had studied Hebrew language, right? I know it's
mhm,
not all the languages, but it is. And we talked earlier about etymology and how, you had an interest in like the origin of words and how words came about. And I
mhm,
was wondering if learning another language helps inform how you interpret or how you use the language so, well, English. We're both talking and speaking and writing in English. So I was
mhm.
wondering if there was a connection there or maybe not.
Oh, yeah, definitely, I think. And Hebrew wasn't so the first language I studied was Spanish, and then Russian. Uh and I was
It's like ping, ping,
ping,
ping.
ping, ping. Yeah, totally pinging. So Spanish and Russian are the two languages that I feel like at different times in my life I've had the most fluency in and are, very rusty now. Like they're in there, somewhere, but like kind of dormant. And I also studied Czech in college for a year, studied Italian a teeny bit, and then most recent I studied Hebrew in college a little, and then again last year I did an immersive Hebrew class, which was amazing. But yeah, I think there is something about experiencing other languages. It definitely that opens something up in the brain because it's like even thinking about how time is constructed or how verbs or like the present tense verb to be is
Mhm,
different in Russian, you don't use the verb to be um or in Hebrew either in the present tense.
mhm.
And so I feel like
Okay,
all of these things kind of
interesting.
and just thinking about things like, roots of words, um, like in Hebrew, I might be getting in this is me kind
Yeah,
of, I'm getting in the
I
weeds,
love it.
sort of like,
Let's talk
this
about it.
is like so fun to me, these things, but every Hebrew word has a three-letter root. And
Okay.
so you can look at all the other words that have the same root that might not seem related, but
Hmm,
then suddenly you're sort of making these connections of like a
that's
really
interesting.
just example off the top of my head is the word shalom, which most people have heard
Okay,
means
yeah,
peace.
yeah,
And the word shalem, which is the same three-letter root, it's the three
yeah.
consonants, the sh,
Okay,
like the L and the M, those are the
okay.
three, that's the root. Um, Shalem means wholeness. So there's this sort of inherent relationship between peace and wholeness in the Hebrew language. So
It's
just for
I mean,
example, yeah.
no, finish your thought. I love it.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, it's just like the thesaurus gets so much easier. It's like you get like a next level of thesaurus if you wanted to, like in poetry, if you wanted another way to say peace, wholeness, and like and have all this access to these
Right.
other words that mean the
Yeah.
same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I think there's also just sort of playing with like sound and musicality and rhythm and like different languages have really different personalities.
Mhm.
Um so yeah, I think all of that probably kind of enlivens I don't know what the neuroscience of it is, but I'm sure there is some.
Yeah.
So,
Wondering, I wanted to pick your brain on this topic of, there's a lot of discourse in the world right now. There's concerns for marginalized communities, worries about a lot of different things, climate change, natural disasters, a whole spectrum of socio-political discourse. And I've seen some people online talk about like what is the like feeling bad about creating art, writing poetry, creating pictures when real suffering is going on. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on art's place in times when
mm,
there is real pain in the world.
I'm so glad you asked that and brought that in. Um Especially that feeling bad piece, because I think it's really, really important to talk about and to address because I there are that is such a prevalent feeling of like, how can I just sit here,
Make pretty
whatever,
pictures.
like
Yes.
who am I to yeah, exactly. Like, how is this helping it? Right. That and I think there is such a almost sort of like no matter where you fall on different, how you relate or what impact these different crises have on you personally. Like we're all living in such a time of so much collapse.
Yes.
And I think it's impossible not to feel that. I mean, it's like if you're breathing, if your heart's beating, you're feeling that in some way,
Yeah.
consciously or not. But it's like that's the literal air we're breathing. And it's hard. It's really hard. And it's really overwhelming, and I think there is that sort of just sense of like it's for me at least can be easy to just freeze like in the face of
Yeah.
like so much. It's like
Yeah.
so back to your question, like how can I just create art, whatever. I think about this pin that I had in high school, like a literal pin that I wore that said it said in Russian. I studied Russian in high school and then I majored in Russian studies, so that was a big part of my life for
Yeah.
8 or 10 years. Um It's at Art Saves Lives. Искусство спасает жизнь or жизни. I'm not sure which it was, but um and I've often thought about that pin and sort of that message. And in a more cynical moment, I might be like, well, not really.
Right.
Right? Like art doesn't literally save, and but actually, like the older I get, and I think this is one of the gifts of midlife, is that I actually think it's true. I think art can save us in some really essential way of helping us stay connected to our own complexity as
Mhm.
humans, are
Mhm.
sometimes really like hard to hold um spectrum of emotions, like all of that. And I feel like the more we actually tend to that internally, the more we're able to be present and thus responsive to
Yes.
whatever is happening outside of us. So I feel like there's such a actually strong relationship between making art in whatever way, whatever form that might take, and being a person in this moment in time in the world, probably at any moment in time, but particularly at this one.
Yeah, I
So
guess.
I feel
Okay.
like if someone has that kind of like, well, this is self-indulgent, it's frivolous, it's, who am I to, or this is just privilege, or, whatever the kind of messaging is, I really, and I mean, I work at this myself sometimes too, because I definitely have, I have conversations with myself about this all the time. I'm just like, what am I actually doing? I'm like sitting here at my desk, writing my Substack, right? It can kind of just feel like, how is this? And then I think about all the ways. Okay, here's a little tangent. There's
Oh
a
my gosh,
children's
go for
book.
it. Mhm.
There's a children's book called Frederick. Is it just called Frederick? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to look it up so that you
Okay.
can get it in the show notes.
I will, for sure.
Um, because I don't want to like go on Google while we're talking.
Right.
But it's about a mouse
Okay.
named Frederick, and he's in a community of mice.
Mhm.
And all of the mice are really industriously working hard to get ready for the winter, as they must, because
Mhm.
they have to have, their supplies and resources and foods squirreled away. Um, I don't know if mice squirreling food away is like a mixed
Right?
metaphor.
Nice.
Anyway, Frederick is busy collecting colors and like dreaming and like, I don't know, I might be making this part up, but like, he's writing poems and he's collecting colors, and everyone's like, Frederick, like what are you even doing? Like you're such a dreamer. Like you're what do we need colors? We need the acorns, like we need food. Oh, now I'm really mixing up my animals, but whatever, you get the idea.
Mice might eat
Um
acorns, you don't know.
with Right, maybe. With apologies to the author. Everyone go read the book. But the point being, Frederick understood something really important, which is that we need that in the dark, in the den, in the caves. Like, when is spring ever going to come? It's like, and I think in some ways we're living in a really dark time. I
Yeah.
mean, we are. There's a lot of crises happening simultaneously that affect every last aspect of life on the planet, including all of us individually. So I feel like actually it's not an indulgence. It's an essential ingredient of staying connected to like ourselves as like just as people. And
Yeah.
especially I think, there's such a sort of like precipitous loss of empathy, or a kind of
Whoa.
like, I think social media, like there's so much disconnect, and I think making art it stitches us back in to connection. And I think connection is what we really need. So it's like making art might seem like it's kind of like a side, like a,
Right.
like how can that be relevant? But then on the other, I also just want to add one more thing while I'm thinking of this, which is that I think it's also okay to make art just for art's sake. Like it doesn't have to be because it's helping.
Yeah.
Like I think that can become another trap.
Does
Does
it
that make
have to be
sense?
meaningful? Huh, I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I
Like, it has to be
definitely
about something, or it has
yes.
to be serving some
Or it has to
greater
be a
purpose,
specific message, and
which is, like,
it can
kinda
just be pretty.
heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Frederick was
right?
just picking colors. He wasn't picking, like, this particular color will help with your eyesight during the he was just picking colors.
Right, this color will alleviate your depression, or,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
No, I love your thoughts
So,
on that. It's like to be a whole person and
yes.
not just an animal surviving.
Yeah,
Art is one of those ingredients. Like, yes, you need food. We all need food, but we also need
of
to be a
course,
whole
right.
a whole person.
Right, like, there's, like, Maslow's, hierarchy of
Hierarchy,
needs,
yes.
like, right, like, of course you need, shelter and food and safety, but then, another piece is that I think spending time making art, again, in whatever form that might take, is also really like, we do know from, like, a physiological, neurological perspective that it's actually healing, like, it's healing for our nervous systems, it's calming, it's regulating.
Yes.
And I think we really need those things, which is also why in my book that I published this year, the word grounding is in the title, because it's like writing is grounding. And I think for me, like, when I spin out, like, what I need more than anything is to, like, find my, like, my daughter and I joke about this, but, like, almost everything, like, every Friday, my newsletter starts with, like, where I'm sitting. Like, all my
Yeah.
letters to her at summer camp when she was little were like, "I'm sitting on the porch," but there's something about, like, where am I? Like, literally, where am I in
Yes, like,
space, you
actually,
know?
where am I? Yes. I love that. Thank you for that insight. I think that was just such a lovely perspective, and we will definitely be linking the book, and I'm gonna go find it. Um,
Yay.
I was wondering, do you have a if you had to sum it up, somebody taking your classes, your coaching, your one-on-ones, your mentorships, is there anything in particular or a few things in particular that you would like them to kinda take away with them?
Well, I feel like I'm gonna have, like, 2 levels to the answer to this.
Oh,
So
I
the
love it.
first
Go for it.
level 1, like, sort of the more surface, like, pat, whatever, pithy level is my tagline, which is 3 things. It's start, keep going, and be good to yourself.
I love it.
Like, those
Yeah.
are the 3 things,
Yep.
and I feel like those are the 3 things I come back to, kind of over and over, and, they don't necessarily go in that order. It's not a linear thing, but I think, what I mean by that, and I think this does come through in working with me in whichever capacity, like, whether it's in a group or one-on-one, um, like, the starting piece is just, like, it's such a practice. And I often refer to Sharon Salzberg, a meditation teacher who's written really beautifully about the magic, what she calls the magic moment. And she says in meditation, the point isn't to kind of try to not think. Like, the magic moment is when you notice that you've totally gotten lost in thought and you
Yeah.
come back to the breath. It's the coming back parts. Then you start again,
Oh,
and
yes.
I feel like that for me shows up in my writing life and my writing
Mhm.
practice or in my creative life. Um, is just like, just come back, like, just start again. We can, I think it, and then it ties in with being good to yourself and keeping going. Like, they all loop together
Yeah.
because I think that so many of us, when you drift off, like, oh my God, I haven't written anything for whatever, or I always create a schedule and I never stick to it. Like, I think the tendency is to go is to feel, discouraged and
Yes.
defeated and
Agreed.
like, ugh, I always
And
do
beat
this,
yourself up. Yes. Yep.
whatever the self-talk is, it's
Yep.
like, I mean, we could probably between us come up with like a dozen things that, like,
100 without
everyone
in
would be
3
like, "Oh, I."
seconds.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. 2 seconds, right? Like, what's one of yours? Like,
Oh,
where do
like,
you?
um and of course I blank as I say this, is
Of
like,
course, right.
but just like, oh, again, like, you do this again, and like, I have to start all over, and everybody else can do it
Yeah.
consistently, and I'm never gonna be anything if I don't like, I'm gonna lose reach, and the art's not gonna yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right? It's like you take the one thought and it's like boom, I
Yes, it
feel like, yeah,
spirals out,
exactly.
yes.
Yep. Totally spirals out. I think comparing is often shows up in there too. And, a big kind of why bother, or I suck,
Oh
right? Like
gosh,
some
that's a big
variation of
one.
that theme. Yeah. And so to me, like, being good to yourself is such an important part of the equation. Because it's like all of that, beating yourself up is accomplishing like
Literally
exactly
nothing,
nothing,
literally.
right? It's like, "It's okay, just start again." Like,
Yeah.
"What?" Just okay, like, start over.
Oh,
Like,
I love
come
that.
back to the, like, in an actual, like, free write with a prompt, I'll encourage people to literally come back to the prompt. Like, just start with
Right.
the same prompt, like, just you're halfway through a free write and you're just like, "Where even am I?" And you come back to the, just start over.
Mhm. I love it.
And I
It
think it's
doesn't
a
have to
life
be
thing
so
too.
linear. Yeah, it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be so linear.
Well, and so
And
regimented. Yeah, and then keep
yes,
going is just like I feel like just like kind of everything. Like just keep going, like keep starting over, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then again, like one of the gifts of growing older is you can start to see what happens when you keep going. And it's probably
yeah,
not what you thought was going to happen, but something will happen and
yeah,
it might surprise you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything as you are at this place in your life with whatever lessons you've learned in creativity in life that you would maybe want to, if you could go back to that teenager, or that little kid, the 20-year-old? I tend to focus more on the teenagers and 20 somethings myself because that was
Mhm.
like the worst time. But
Mhm.
or that you would maybe want to share with that that version
Hmm.
of Jenna?
What would I want to say to her?
Is it just start, keep going, be good to yourself?
Yeah, I'm really thinking about that.
Don't date
Hmm.
that boy? That's what I would tell my
That was
20-year-old.
one of yours.
Don't date that boy.
Have you heard of 6-word memoirs?
I think so, but
Yeah, it's like
tell
that's
me
a
about
fun one. Like what 6 words would you say to your,
Oh,
one of your younger selves?
well, that's only 4. I got 2. I can
That's
add
good.
some
That's fine.
adjectives.
Whatever. 4 words, 6 words. What would one of mine be? I think I would tell her it's all going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Thank you. That's lovely.
Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah.
And on
And,
that,
I feel like Mary Oliver, I have to sneak in a Mary Oliver, which, the probably the most quoted Mary Oliver line of all time. Can you guess?
it's either the one about tell about it or it's a good thing to wake up on a
Oh, those are good ones. Actually,
those
the
are
one I
my
was
2
thinking
favorites.
of, those are your 2. You tell be astonished. Yeah.
Yeah, and tell about it. Be astonished, tell
That's
about it.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the line from Wild Geese, but you do not have to be good. And I think that for me would be one of the things I would go back to tell my younger selves. Just like, it's okay. You don't have to try so hard.
You know what though? That it's such a weighted word, and I think that's such a weighted
Mhm.
message because there's so much that we have attached to the word good,
Good.
and whatever that looks like for us, you've gotta it's such a burden, has for a lot of us, and I thank you for bringing that up. You don't have to be good. Whatever that means
Yeah.
to you, you can put it down.
Yeah, you're so right. Like the word, like, and it kind of goes just to kind of come full circle to the conversation about language. It's like this word, like it's just this sound, right? Good. Like when you say a word 20 times and it sounds kind of
Meaningless.
silly or
It
meaningless,
loses the
and
meaning.
yet, but we assign so much meaning.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, even the word feels
and
weighty. Like, I have a physical
yeah,
reaction in my body
right,
talking to you
right.
about this
And
word.
right, and I think that's what, sort of all of my work and all of my practices come back to is like you don't have to be good, like you don't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to kind of, um your art doesn't have to be hanging in the Louvre or, your book doesn't have to win a Pulitzer, you know what I mean? Like you can
Yes.
just show up.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to turn it around now that we had this lovely conversation and end with my favorite way to end, which is
Okay.
kind of pithy and tongue in cheek. But what is a piece of garbage advice a piece of advice you think is just garbage that you would like to share? Uh,
Oh, God. Oh, that's such a great question. Let's see. Wow, I'm having like this kind of flood of a few different possibilities. I'm like, which one should I pick?
right? Could be multiple. We got time.
Could be multiple. A couple that come to mind. One is kind of the admonishment. I don't know if it's advice or more like a warning, but like about, well, that's not practical.
Oh, yes. Oh my God. Thank you for bringing that up.
And,
100%.
kind of that like fear driven, you know, just yeah, like kind of getting like smothered by that.
Mhm.
Um I I was told at a really like critical moment in my life um to back burner my need for self-expression.
Oh, I don't like that for you at all.
I didn't like it for me either. It felt really, yeah, just it felt really silencing to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
as it
and
should.
it felt like not being it felt like the opposite of being seen, and I think really what we all
100%.
most need is to feel seen and acknowledged. So, yeah, I think garbage advice is it's interesting, probably most advice.
And to be fair, especially because a lot of advice is
Because
unsolicited.
exactly, like, advice is,
So
like,
by that
really
nature, it's
well-intentioned,
I didn't ask for this. Please leave me alone.
like, so much of advice is projection. I think advice is a really dicey proposition in general,
Fair,
so
I mean, fair
I've tried to
enough.
learn this, like, I really tried because I have as much advice to offer as anyone, but
Right,
I really have tried to learn, like, to ask, like, "Do you want my opinion?"
right.
Like, "Is this gonna be" Yeah, so I think advice that's been basically kind of about, shutting down that just
Mhm.
that kind of impulse to, like, go for it or
Yeah,
take risks, and so I'd say that's been pretty, trashy.
good. I love it. I love it. Jenna Schwartz, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your input. I'm so thankful to have you on the podcast. We will be saying goodbye now. Everybody, we will be linking to Jenna's various links and the Frederick book. We will find it and we'll put it in the show notes. Thank you.
Brandy, thank you so much. This has been really fun.
Bye for now.
Bye.